to the Des Moines Register Political Soapbox. I'm Rachel Stassenberger, the executive editor of the Register, and thank you for being here. And now we have Rob Sand, a Democrat running for governor. Please speak to us.
Hello, Iowa. How's everybody doing? Good to see you. Thanks for being here. I want to start with something that I think is common sense and most people understand it, but very few candidates want to talk about it. Our political system is broken largely because it's run by two private clubs. Many of the people who are in the leadership of those private clubs are happy to have you hate people you used to love if it means that it's easier for them to control you. And they've realized that a lot of the problems that we face are hard to solve. You got to read things and learn stuff. My goodness. You've got to talk to people that you don't even like. But it's easier, instead of doing that, to just, because it's a broken two-choice political system, demonize the only other person on the ballot and lie about them. And then you can get elected and reelected and reelected, and if you haven't solved any problems for anybody at all. Does anybody think that that description of our political system is unfair? So that's why we got to fight against it, because it's not working for us. It's working for insiders and special interest groups. If we're going to work together to fix it, we have to do a little bit something that they don't want us to do. They want us to hate our neighbors. Let's take a minute to love our neighbors. I want to take a second for us to sing the first verse of America the Beautiful. It starts so beautiful for spacious skies. I think at the end of the day, I can tell you exactly why I registered as an independent voter when I first registered to vote. It's because I don't like the two-choice political system. I think it does more to divide us from each other than it does to actually work to solve our problems. Because, well, it's the lesser of two evils at the end of the day. And it's not often enough that we are able to feel inspired to voting for someone instead of feeling like we're trapped into doing it. But that said, and let me rephrase that in a way too. I realized that I had to register with a party in order to vote in a primary. Can we talk for a moment about how un-American that is? Here we tell people in June, sorry, independent voters, you're less equal than the rest of us and we're not going to have you vote. But hey, come back in July and we'll celebrate Independence Day. Let me rephrase it in another way. Here, where you have a constitutional right to vote, and there's an election that your tax dollars are paying for, you're told that you got to join a private club before you can participate. Says who? Can anybody give me a good reason that we have to be Democrats and Republicans? There aren't any. The truth is that these two private clubs have written special legal privileges into the law for themselves because it makes it easier for them to have power. We should change that. We should end that. It ought to be focused on the people of the state of Iowa, not political parties. Now that said, when I registered as a Democrat in order to vote for a primary, I did it for a few different reasons. One is my faith. The New Testament is focused on the least of these, and the idea that what you do to the least of these, you do to me. Just like that guy's t-shirt right over there says. Oh, that might be Jesus, actually, because he's got a luchador mask on. But that message from the New Testament is focused on the little guy, and in my early 20s, it was clear to me that the Democratic Party was more focused on the little guy. I also really like having clean water to fish in and to drink. I also like having public land where you shouldn't have to be a landowner in order to go out and enjoy the great outdoors. You should be able to play outside no matter how much money you got. And I remember Bill Clinton, as president, balancing the budget and using the surplus to pay down the debt. And I remember thinking, thank you. That number should go down instead of keeping going up. And so I registered as a Democrat, but I didn't leave my independent mind behind. I know in the course of this campaign, I have said things that upset some of the folks in my party. I'm not sorry. It's a lot easier for me to tell you what I think than it is for me to remember what I said. So I'm going to keep doing that because it's better for me, and I frankly think it's better for all of us. I think we're all probably tired of having people tell us what they think we want to hear as opposed to telling us what they think. Now, when I finished my education, I went to work at the Attorney General's office, 7 years as the Chief Public Corruption Prosecutor. prosecuted the Iowa Film Office tax credit scandal, uncovered and prosecuted the largest lottery rigging scheme in American history, and prosecuted quite a bit of violent crime at the same time. Some of the worst predators that Iowa has ever seen are now in the Civil Commitment Unit in Cherokee because I put them there. I realized in the course of my work that a lot of the work that I did with the auditor's office was enjoyable and fun, and they had great people working in the auditor's office, but sometimes their investigations for public corruption didn't quite work well in a courtroom. And I knew why. All the folks in the auditor's office were accountants. God bless accountants. You gotta have them if you're gonna do financial statement audits. But if your office's job is also to conduct public corruption investigations, you might want a few folks involved who have been in a courtroom quite a bit as a prosecutor or someone in law enforcement. And I thought, well, I could fix that. And I know that throughout my life, the idea of having balance between people who think differently from each other is actually an effective way to solve problems. I learned this when I was in Decorah. I spent my junior and my senior year in high school getting a skate park built. And that was property owners who were mad at skateboarders working with skateboarders. We got it done. When I was a student, I put together a class on conservatism, not because I wanted to hear more about only things that I agreed with, but I wanted to encounter every idea that I could, because I knew at the end of the day, if I could have a deeper conversation with someone that I thought I disagreed with, we'd actually probably figure out that there's a place down a little bit deeper where we do agree. I think that when different people who think differently from each other work together, we actually get to better answers. Now, people who love politics, they tell me, Sand, you dummy, you're doing it wrong. The people who oppose you, you're supposed to punish them. The people who support you, you're supposed to reward them. That's how you get as much power as possible and make everybody scared of you. There are two answers to that question as far as I'm concerned. Number one, who is ever going to be scared of me? Look at this face. As a little old lady told me live on camera with KCCI, you look like you're 12. I said, I know, isn't it crazy? People talk about how you age when you're holding political office, and they ask me what the secret is, and I say, don't lie. My second answer to the people who tell me I'm doing it wrong is a little more serious. What if I'm not trying to do politics? What if it's not about making people scared of me? What if I'm actually trying to do something different? What if when the campaign ended after Election Day, you started something called public service, where the winners say to the losers, hey, come on board. Even a broken clock like you is right twice a day. And I'd love to have you there for every once in a while when I'm ever so slightly a little bit mistaken. That's a good way to approach things. This is what Iowans do all the time. And so because we had a balanced senior leadership team in my first term in the auditor's office, we uncovered a record amount of misspent money. Then Iowans who thought differently from each other worked together to re-elect me as your state auditor. Democrats and independents and Republicans. Then the legislature came back to town and with the governor passed the single biggest pro-corruption bill in Iowa history, despite bipartisan opposition making it harder for the state auditor's office to do their job. Now, politicians will make words come out of their mouth to defend this law. All you really need to know is that every single government watchdog in America who weighed in on this, and there were many, Democrats and independents and Republicans, every one of them said this is going to lead to an increase in waste, fraud, and abuse of your tax money. George W. Bush's Comptroller General of the United States of America, who ran for governor as a Republican in his state in 2018, wrote our legislature 2 letters saying how dumb this was. They made it the law anyway. How did we get here, folks? How did we get here? In a state where we have such a tradition of good government in Iowa, and I just described for you something that sounds like it came from Illinois. Ouch. If I'm offending anyone from Illinois, I'm not sorry. Here's how we got here. 10 years of one-party control. I'm not here to tell you that the answer is to give the other party 10 years of one-party control. If you think that that's the answer, then I think that you should visit California and New York. They are not utopia. They have problems. Now, some of the problems are different because the parties are different, but many of them are actually the same, because when too few people have too much power for too long, bad things happen. You finish this phrase: power corrupts, and absolute power
corrupts absolutely.
And we can say in Iowa it takes 10 years. Because where are we right now? Over the last 3 years, averaging 48th for personal income growth, but what are we at the top for in growth? When I was growing up in Decorah, our education system was among the best in the country, and we are now in the bottom half and losing to Nebraska. It's funny, but it's also really not funny. I hate losing to Nebraska. We have a corruption crisis, a crisis of high costs, and a crisis of cancer. But in the Capitol building in Des Moines, they're running around saying, hey guys, we got a real problem. The state auditor, he won't quit doing his job. We got to figure out how we can stop him. I'm had enough. This is a simple concept. I think most Iowans are familiar with it. You can put something in a place and it does okay for a little while, but if it's there for too long, it gets unbalanced. You got to take it out and put something else in. I just described crop rotation, and that works for politicians the same way it does for corn and beans, ladies and gentlemen. Time to rotate the crops in the Capitol building. If I win this race, I am working with the Republican legislature. If that is news to you, good morning, you slept in, it's 2026. I don't know what year you fell asleep, but those majorities are still going to be there after Election Day. What that means is that every single bill and every single budget is going to have bipartisan approval. It means that nobody over here can do something too crazy and nobody over there can do something too crazy either. And you know what that sounds like to me? Iowa. This is an Iowa tradition. We sent Tom Harkin and Chuck Grassley to the United States Senate together, not because we were confused that they belonged in different political parties, but because we knew they did. And we knew they needed to work together to make sure that common sense prevailed. In fact, 30 of my first 34 years alive, up until this last 10 years of one-party control, we had divided government in Des Moines, too. And I listened to Mike Gronstall and Linda Upmeyer, a Democratic and a Republican leader, tell a group that I was with in around 2013, we do our best work when we are forced to work together. Forced by the people of the state of Iowa. Because we want an Iowa that works for everyone that is here. Every Iowan, not insiders, not special interest groups. And we get it when we force them to work together. This isn't a foreign concept to people in the state of Iowa. This is what my grandpa was doing at 6 a.m. coffee at Hardee's, and then 7 a.m. coffee at McDonald's, and then another coffee at Burl's. This is what my mom is doing in her quilting group and in her knitting group. It's what all of you are doing in your social circles around your communities. You get together with people. You don't check party ID on the way in the door. You sit down around the table. You don't at that point have people raise their hand to figure out which party there's more of. You just listen to each other and you give and you take. Appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.